Hello, everyone. Welcome to another interview for Motivate Magazine. My name is Kim Langling. I am an author, freelance writer, and podcast host of Let Fear Bounce. But today I am here on behalf of Motivate Magazine, and I have the beautiful Michelle Coombs with me today, coming to us from the United Kingdom. And I'm going to interview her on her story in the inspirational edition of the Motivate Magazine. Now, Michelle is an experienced coach, mentor, and ITSM genius. She is focused on working closely with individuals, businesses, and IT service providers, helping them to significantly improve their levels of communication. So, Michelle, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Kim. Thank you for having me.
So I read your story in the inspirational edition of Motivate Magazine. First off, the title, I love it, Break the Glass Ceiling. And as a female who was in the manufacturing realm for quite a few years doing marketing and sales, that was something that was discussed a lot at roundtables and panel discussions. I was in a female group, networking group, and we discussed that often. So reading your story, I a lot of times I found myself going, I know just what she's talking about. But I loved your story. And first off, though, I love how your dad was such a huge influence on your life and the direction that you took. So I want to start right with there. So if you want to, and if you can, please share about your dad and how he helped shape your journey.
Oh, where to start with my dad? He is, I'm trying to think how I could describe him. He's probably the very epitome of the kind of person that I want to work with, because me and my dad can have a whole conversation in grunts, and we know exactly what we mean just by going, We can have a whole conversation like that. So, how can I explain him? So he used to be an engineer for the telephone exchange years and years ago when I was younger. And of course, he brought up me and my brother. We was 4 and 2, so we was little, and it was just the three of us. And he literally, as I said in the piece there, that he had absolutely no idea how to bring up a girl. So I'd be spending my time in the garage, in the workshops, and all the rest of it. And there's this thing that's just popped in my head, so I'm going to share it. When I used to brush my hair, it used to be really, really long. And he used to just get it. And it was almost like he was hammering into a wall, and your head would be back. And yeah, so he had no gentleness whatsoever. And I could probably remember about 5 hugs on one hand. 5 hugs just totally in my entire life, because that was the way we were brought up. And that was perfectly fine. And after a while, he'd moved from telecommunications into data networking. And he'd set up his own business and would travel across the UK, across breweries and things like that. And I always remember on a weekend, I used to go with him into the breweries to help him pull cables and things. And I'm sure it was because I was small enough to get into the little gaps and drag them through. So he didn't have to get in the dirty places or the small squishy spaces. And, but I remember he brought home an old ZX80. This is like back in the day, if people don't know what they are. It's a black box, literally like that, and used to like run them with tapes and stuff. And we would spend hours and hours programming this thing just to be able to play like Donkey Kong for about 5 minutes. But yeah, whatever my brother and he were up to, I'd be involved in it. So it was just, we're just people, and it was a very different take on how it led into the rest of the life, because you're just a human being. That's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, he's a funny character, is my dad.
And well, I love funny characters. they're the most interesting ones.
Yeah, and particularly when he's had a few Stella in him is even better.
So you journeyed into the IT business.
I did.
And have climbed your way up. You work full time, yes. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you climbed your way up that ladder. Now, one part in your article that I really resonated with was you would go on interviews, and being a female, unfortunately, was a detriment, although it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't always spoken out loud, except for the one time you mentioned in your story that someone had
Yeah.
said to you, maybe it's because you're a woman. That made me cringe to hear that. But it does happen. And I've had it happen in my life as well. But I also, the best part of your article to me anyway, was when you said you changed your CV from Michelle Coombs to M. Coombs.
Mm-hmm.
And that made a big difference. And I know several women who've done the same thing. And each time they said the same thing. They walked into the interview and the interviewer was quite surprised to see a female walk in the door. But I love how you did that. You just said, poop on it. I've got the experience. They're asking, I'm going to get this interview. And then you also said that you went and bought your first ever skirt suit.
Yeah. I knew exactly what I was walking into, Kim.
Yep.
As soon as I got that first bounce and it says the role's no longer available, and a few days later it was re-advertised, I knew. And I just decided to have a bit of fun with it. So I even got the receptionist playing along because obviously I went out, bought this suit, and I think it was only like a network support engineer role. That is what it was. And so bought this skirt suit because I thought, I know that they're expecting a man, dear Mr. Coombs, all the rest of it. I thought, yeah. So anyway, I walked in and I was very clear with this receptionist. I says, can you tell so-and-so that his interviewee is here? And I stressed this interviewee, and she looked at me and I looked at her. And when you just think, this is going to be the biggest waste of time, but it's going to be so much fun. It was one of those. So she grinned at me, says, yeah, I'll let him know. And she rang him through and says, your interviewee is here. And this chap, I'll never forget it. It's one of those ones that really resonate. Comes through, and it was like proper bolshy ways. And he comes in and he looked at the reception. My interview's here, and she pointed me out. And it was almost like a sketch from a comedy, because it was like, I'm not exaggerating either. So he trotted me down behind him, like, because he walked smack bang in the middle of the corridor, everything.
Oh,
And I'm just, so sort of like, you will walk behind me because my arms are out and all the rest of it. I thought, so we'd had this interview, and at the end, it was like, well, I can offer you an office administrator job. And I thought, I'll give you perfect examples. So I thought I would refuse him. And but I would do it very loudly on the way out the corridor as he was trailing after me. And I looked at the receptionist, and she's hiding behind the counter on the way out. So it was tons of fun. Needless to say, I didn't get the job.
I love it though, because, and we're kindred spirits, because I would have done the same thing. Well,
sometimes you just need to do these things, I think.
You do, because, and it's not mean, but certain people need to realize you're not the be all and end all.
Yeah, or bring an awareness to themselves of how their behavior could actually be causing a problem.
Right. And then there are those who will never get it.
And he was probably one of those, I've got to admit.
I've met a few of those in my day. And
I've got to stress that not all gents are the same here. So,
no, they're not. They're not.
They're not. We are talking the odd exception. So, yeah.
Yes, we are. Now, I know here in my area, over the years, and it's, so many of the jobs and the jobs that I've been in actually have been very, very male dominated. And when I started my career, I've been in sales and marketing for 24 years now, and until just recently, literally in the last 4 months. But over that time frame, it was very, very male dominated because I was in the manufacturing sector. So you didn't see females going from one manufacturing business to another to discuss with the CEOs and the higher ups, why it is they should buy your product or whatever. And I had to work very hard to establish my knowledge, to prove to them. And some days were more difficult than others. And at the beginning of my career, I did notice what we call it here is the good old boys club. And it was all men. They didn't let women in. And, and I'm not bashing them. 20 years ago, that was the main mindset.
Absolutely.
You're trying to sell me electrical, magnetic interference products to the military. You are going to sell that to me. So, that was the attitude I would get. And my attitude was, yes, I am. And before I leave here, you're going to be buying all kinds of stuff.
Here's the paper to sign on.
So, and I had to really prove myself, but I was so fortunate that my boss, who was male, and an engineer that I worked very closely with, who was male, were very open-minded. And I would walk into their office and say, all right, I might not know all of the lingo and all of what this means because I'm not a tech person. Draw me a picture or show me a picture and explain to me how this stuff works so I can walk in there. I might not use all the lingo, but I will be able to tell them exactly what their problem is and how I can fix it. I was so fortunate that those two men, they literally took the time and hours to explain to me on a layman's terms, because a lot of people I'd be talking to might be purchasers, but then I started getting put into going and talking to the engineers themselves. And I wasn't nervous. I was like, no, I know what I'm talking about.
Let's do this.
That's right. Let's do this. Yeah. So give me some instances during your career, which I'm sure you've ran into some of the same over the years, because you're in a what used to be very, very male dominated field.
It sure is. It still is as well in plenty of cases. A couple of people that really stood out for me there was a chap that was in the workshop and I alluded to him. And literally every time I had a break, so it was break times, lunchtime, he'd call me down to the workshop and he'd show me how bits work, take things apart. Because at the time I was only in a telephone support role. So we'd go down, we'd play in the workshop, he'd introduce me to all these new printers and electronic gadgets and whatever it was that I was working on. And we'd spend hours fixing them. Or I could even be working and he'd ring up and say, I've got this really new bit of kit coming. Do you want to come and check it out? And it was the geekiest of geeks that I could find. He literally had hair like Albert Einstein. And he got on with very few people, but I seemed to get on well with him. So,
new batteries, please.
So sorry. And I'd got my headset in as well, so I never even heard her.
New batteries, please.
That threw us off, didn't it, Kim? So sorry.
Sorry.
But we seemed to manage to hit it off over the electronic devices anyway. And literally I would spend several hours a week, if not a day, in the workshop instead of being where I should be at the end of a phone.
But you learned a lot and he took the time to show you. And I think that's amazing.
Absolutely. I've been as well with another organisation where I used to work directly for the COO, and he spent a lot of time developing my weaker sides, because we all have weak sides, and mine was being confident enough with customers so I could be put on the spot and all the rest of it, and I'd get a bit flustered and I'd keyboard warrior rather than speaking to them. And he spent quite a bit of time saying, look, you wouldn't have had this role if I didn't believe in you. There was a lot of talk like that, and it was really good actually that he would spend time. We'd often travel to different sites around the UK, so when we was in the same site in the same place, we'd often eat together and talk about career development paths and things like that as well. So it was really good to have those experiences, because it's people at the end of the day. He was really good actually. A lot of his senior management team were women, and he would actively encourage women in any role.
And it's lovely. I love running into people like that, because they're thinking future and outside the box, at least, certain time frames in history. Those are the ones that we're thinking outside of that current box and seeing the future. Is there are amazingly intelligent, educated, and inspirational women out there that are just blazing the trail in every aspect of business, whether it's manufacturing, production, engineering, innovative things, just amazing women. I've met them. I'm sure you've met them yourself. And you may even, I think you said you've got 70 folks currently. Now you're in a leadership role.
No, one of my
folks?
previous roles was for 70 odd people. That was a previous role.
Okay. And what do you currently do now?
So now, now I am the Geek Coach and the Tech Leader Academy. They're both my businesses. One is working with individuals and IT managed service providers who have got problems and want to develop either themselves as an individual, and it can be about anything, or whether it's about building high performing teams, or they've got an issue where they've not got the people aligned with the exec teams. So those kind of things there. And then the other arm is the Tech Leader Academy, which is teaching IT individuals who are on that career path. They are excellent with technology skills. They're reasonably good with process, but their people management, because there's an IT subculture and personal stuff is kept personal. They don't communicate very well, and they don't get how people really operate. So it's about bringing the future IT leaders and bringing the humanity is not the word I want to use, but that kind of human personal skills into what is effectively an emotionless robot.
And I've found over the years, engineers and those in high level tech positions, because I've worked with many of them, their personalities are much, much different. I'm very bubbly and outgoing when I meet people, and I'm very real, and I can't use the tech jargon, but I can explain. I'll say, hey, you have a box that we need to have, radio frequency shielding on. And give me the box and I'm going to show you where the apertures are that need closed, that need covered, and just me, my personality, that's how I was, able to talk to a lot of folks. But a lot of the engineers, their social skills, like you had mentioned, talking one-on-one, they seemed to, it was a struggle. And sometimes it was an actual fear for them. They became very uncomfortable because they're so used to working in such intense, whatever it is that they do, because I don't understand it, but they would be so intent on what they're doing. That was their main focus. And they'd look up and go, oh, a human,
And grunt. Yeah. If you're lucky, they might look over the top of a monitor. If this is the monitor, they'll peep over the top and go, and then duck back down. That's it.
Yeah, and it would almost, some of them, now, not all of them were like that. Some of them I met were just, amazingly outgoing and super fun to talk to, and took the time to explain their process and their project to me, so I understood it even more. But there were quite a few that they just have a different personality. Their brain's wired different. And nothing negative about that at all, because, oh my goodness, do we need those people? Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this type of meeting that we are right now via Zoom.
Yeah, we certainly need them, don't we?
Yes, exactly. Because life revolves around, the internet and the computer and your telephones now.
Certainly now. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I love your journey, where you started, and your dad, got you into that. Pulling things apart and showing, and seeing how things work and stuff like that, and crawling in between places. And I'm sure you learned something. You might not even realize you were learning it. You were just absorbing it.
That's when it was playtime with my dad. And it was either that or getting sludgy and then washed down with a pressure washer. So I think cables is much better.
Pressure washer would hurt.
Yeah, literally quick splash of the water, you're fine, get in the truck.
So you currently, you've got, what'd you say, two businesses?
Two, yes. Yeah.
and you're helping people in many different ways in that realm, which I think is amazing. Now, are most of your clients men or women?
They're mainly women at the minute. I've got some guys on there, but mainly women, because I think they are also looking to get over that obstacle that they believe is there that is not really there.
Right. I think it's amazing. I love what you're doing. Absolutely love what you're doing. Another quick question that just popped in my head. Are the ladies that you're working with, are they younger or older?
About mid-range.
Oh,
So
okay.
I've got some from about 28, but they're few and far few and far between. The majority are 35 upwards.
Okay.
As they're really trying to make that career push through, you see.
Right. And they're at that stage in their career life. Yeah.
And they seem to be just hitting that. Why am I not getting any further?
Right. Yeah. That darn glass ceiling, you can see it, but you can't get through it.
Yeah.
And I love how you've pretty much busted through it, and you're helping others to bust through it as well. Sometimes you can only tap at it and get a crack, but you're still getting there.
It could be a little shard a day, but as long as you're one step at a time in it, that's all good.
Yep. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of one tip would you want to leave with our viewers and listeners today? Those females out there that are in that IT or engineering or technical world that may feel like they're stuck because they're so into their job, and like we were talking about, the social skills, not that they're lacking, but they need to bump them up a little bit.
As the first thing I would suggest is, if they see a role that they really want, even if they don't fully match the requirements, go for it. And the reason I say that is because guys will apply for these roles even if they're like a 40% fit, whereas a woman will wait until she's 85, 90, 95% of the way there. So you can imagine you've got all these guys coming in at like, oh, I can meet 40%. And then you've got these few women that can do the 85. But if you was to take the guys down to about the same level, it would be equal. So go for it.
I love that.
And go for it.
And that's interesting. I like how you mentioned, and I had honestly had not thought of it, that men, and you're right, more than likely around that
they
range
put
of
themselves
40%.
out there, literally.
Yeah. They just, applied everything, and they only could do potentially 40% of the job or have experience in it. And I've been one of those females that I do wait until, 80, 85, 90%, because I'll be like, oh, I don't have all of those skills. I shouldn't even apply. I won't even bother. Mm-hmm. And I did have an instance where what I had mentioned earlier, when I was in more of the tech area in sales and marketing, but still tech, that was a job that I never, ever would have thought applying to, because I'm thinking, I don't know anything about electrical magnetic interference products. And then
you still did it, and you still succeeded.
I did it. And I went in there to this interview with 3 men sitting across from me, firing off questions. And I most of the time talked about my leadership skills and what I did for my nonprofit, because that's what they kept asking me about. And I'm a veteran, and all 3 of the gentlemen sitting across from me, unbeknownst to me, were veterans themselves. And the organization that I volunteered with at that time, and still do, was a veteran organization. They hired me. 2 hours later, I got a call. And I said, well, am I the most experienced for this job? And they said, no, you're the least experienced for this job, but you have all of the skills that we want. And we know that you can do a phenomenal job for us. So the job is yours if you want it. And I was blown away by that. So, never discount stuff that might not be your actual job description, but what you do outside of your job as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you think about it, you said you got me now. If you think about it, it's those conversational and the outside stuff which can't be taught. how to fix a problem or how to use a technology or implement a technology, that can be taught and it will change in a few years. So you've got to show that adaptability as well and resilience, because those are the important traits to have.
Absolutely. And I've never forgotten that I was hired because of what I did in my volunteer life. And they said, you were in the military and all of those skills that came with that. You've got leadership skills, you're leading this, you're forming this, you're fundraising, you know how to get tons of money, and I honestly at that time had never thought of that as a job skill. And now I do, obviously. It was years ago, but now I'm like, I got it all going on.
The song Queen, but changing I want to I got it all. I'm not going to sing, but you can imagine.
Well, I can only imagine that. Do you use that? Do you speak about those types of things outside of the actual job description with the ladies that you're working with now? Do you talk about other things like in their life that, hey, you're running a household, you're doing this, you're doing that.
Have you considered your communication skills with your kids, for example? So it relates everywhere. So if you're having issues in a workplace, you'll often find that those same issues will perpetuate across all areas of their life.
It is very interesting when you dig into it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite fascinating. I like it. I tell you what, I would like to work with at some point, Kim, and if you ever get to interview one of these people, is send them in my direction. I'd love a catch up. Is a guy doing the same as what we do, the same as what I do, but for men in a female industry. So think about the male midwives.
Right.
I'd love to have that same kind of conversation and see what issues they're facing. That would be a good collaboration, that would.
Right. Male midwives, male nurses.
Because kindergarten teachers, all of them. Because I imagine that it would flip the other way for those guys. Well, in fact, the research I did showed that they had issues. So, but I've yet to find somebody that will coach and train them.
Yeah. Interesting. I will keep that in mind. I will jot that down.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you so much for your time today. This was a wonderful chat. I loved it. I could talk to you actually much longer, but I loved having you as an interviewee.
Thank you.
I had to throw that in there. But I'm going to screen share real quick, and then I'm going to come back to you.
Excellent.
So again, folks that are listening and watching, this was on behalf of Motivate Magazine, is written by small business owners for small business owners who want to lead in their respective industries. It is the go-to Bible for small business owners. So folks, it is definitely worth the small investment to subscribe to Motivate Magazine. You will not be disappointed. Thank you again so much, Michelle, for being with me today. This has been amazing. I've loved it. Loved having you on and learning your journey. And I'm sure that your journey is going to, your personal journey in helping others is just going to be amazing. And you might not ever even see the outcomes of it, but you are making a huge impact on many lives. And I think that is absolutely wonderful. So good for you for doing that.
Thank you.
All right, thanks again for being on the Motivate Magazine YouTube channel, and we will talk soon. And everybody, thanks for joining in and listening. Take care.
Bye.